very warm welcome to our viewers and welcome to a new episode of Africa Today, our show bringing you all the latest news and developments happening all around the Black continent. I'm Angie Meher joining you for today's edition of the show. And as usual, we begin straight away with a look at some of the news making the headlines, and we start with news from home, moving to the Minister of Health and Population, Dr. Khaled Abdel Ghaffar, who affirmed Egypt's readiness to provide technical and medical assistance to African countries hit by the Ebola virus, including personal protective equipment and knowledge sharing through African coordination mechanisms. Abdel Ghaffar has called for a unified African-led response to the Ebola outbreak, stressing urgent continental coordination to contain the spread of the disease in the DRC and Uganda. The appeal came during a high-level ministerial meeting of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Africa CDC, which was held via video conference, bringing together senior African health officials and international partners to assess the evolving situation and align response strategies. During the session, Abdel Ghaffar emphasized that Africa has the institutional capacity and expertise to mount an effective and coordinated response to cross-border health threats, warning that the outbreak extends beyond public health concerns to include social and economic dimensions. He further reaffirmed Egypt's solidarity with the DRC and Uganda, praising the frontline health workers and rapid response teams. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization, the WHO, has reported 220 suspected Ebola deaths in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC. It warned the outbreak is now outpacing response. We have the details.
The World Health Organization, WHO, revealed that a rapidly spreading Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo has caused 220 suspected deaths as health officials struggle to catch up with the epidemic. While 101 confirmed cases and 10 confirmed deaths have been recorded, WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said the true scale is far larger. Tedros said there are now more than 900 suspected cases and 220 suspected deaths. He was speaking at the virtual ministerial briefing on the Bundibugyo Ebola outbreak on Monday. The outbreak, declared as a public health emergency of international concern on May 17, has also spread to Uganda, which has 5 confirmed cases and 1 death. Tedros highlighted a critical challenge. The delay in detecting the outbreak means that health teams are now playing catch-up with a very fast-moving epidemic. He said the WHO is urgently scaling up operations, but at the moment the epidemic is outpacing them. The Ebola strain involved is Bundibugyo virus, for which no approved vaccines or therapeutics exist. Previous outbreaks of this strain occurred only twice, in Uganda 2007 and DRC 2012. The WHO has recommended prioritizing 2 monoclonal antibodies for clinical trials. Compounding the crisis, the affected provinces of Ituri and North Kivu are plagued by intense insecurity and community distrust. Recent months have seen intensified fighting displacing over 100,000 people, along with 2 security incidents at health facilities last week. The WHO has raised its national risk assessment to very high, while regional risk remains high and global risk low. Neighboring countries are urged to take immediate action. Tedros is set to travel to the DRC with WHO's emergencies director, as the agency commits to stopping the outbreak.
In other news, the 2026 annual meetings of the African Development Bank Group run from May 15th to May the 29th. They are held in Brazzaville under the theme Mobilizing Africa's Development Financing at Scale in a Fragmented World. We have more details in this report.
The 2026 annual meetings of the African Development Bank AFDB Group opened in Brazzaville on Monday under the theme Mobilizing Africa's Development Financing at Scale in a Fragmented World. It brings together African leaders, policymakers, investors, development partners and private sector representatives to address the continent's widening financing gap. The 5-day meetings, held from 25th to 29th of May in partnership with the government of the Republic of the Congo, came at a critical moment for Africa as tighter global financial conditions, geopolitical tensions and declining traditional development finance intensify pressure on countries to mobilize resources for development at scale. The annual gatherings, the AFDB Group's most important statutory event, include the 61st annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank and the 52nd annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the African Development Fund, the bank's concessional financing arm. The program also features high-level policy dialogues and knowledge events focusing on practical solutions to strengthen domestic resource mobilization, expand co-financing mechanisms, crowd in private capital, and deepen partnerships capable of accelerating investment across the continent.
For more on this, we're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest for the afternoon, Dr. Ayman, Ghoneim, the economic and legal expert. Dr. Ayman, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon to you, madam.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your time this afternoon. Now, Doctor, let's talk a bit about the primary objectives of this year's annual meetings in Brazzaville of the bank, given, of course, the current challenges in the region, in the African continent, and the world as a whole.
Well, actually, 7th meeting of the African Brazzaville, capital of Congo, it aims at forming Africa finance independence model to a more organized model. Actually, done through mobilizing,
yes,
attracting domestic and as well as foreign capital, reform finance more for this is sort of the accord on development and cooperation. The from rich to poor fell by % in 25 to
Dr. Ayman, apologies. We do have a bit of a technical problem with our phone line. We will go and take a break and continue with more news and continue with our reports until we can fix the phone line. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back with you, sir, on the phone after this. But let's for now move to Senegal, which is witnessing a political crisis after the Speaker of Senegal's parliament said he was resigning. His announcement came 2 days after his close ally was fired as the Prime Minister. Let's take a look.
The move by Senegal's Speaker El Malick Ndiaye to quit clears the way for sacked Premier Ousmane Sonko to run for the post of head of parliament, where his PASTEF party holds a strong majority. Analysts say that could further complicate reform efforts by President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who sacked his former ally Sonko on Friday after months of tensions. Ndiaye said on Facebook his decision to step down was a personal choice, guided above all by his notion of institutions, public responsibility and the greater interest of the nation. After Sonko's sacking, no details were provided on the appointment of a new prime minister. Faye owed his presidency in large part to Sonko, who would almost certainly have taken the top job had he not been barred from running in the last presidential election due to a defamation conviction. Their PASTEF party won the 2024 elections on a promise of a profound political shake-up, vowing to fight corruption and inheriting an economy mired in debt. But there had been clear discord between the president and prime minister for months, making their governing alliance increasingly uncertain. Sonko had accused Faye of a failure of leadership for not backing him against his critics.
Right, welcome back and back to our discussion of the 2026 annual meetings of the African Development Bank Group, which run till May the 29th, which are being held in Brazzaville. Once again, delighted to have with us over the telephone our guest, Dr. Ayman Ghoneim, our economic and legal expert. Hopefully this time you can hear us clearly, Dr. Ayman.
Yes, madam, I can very clear.
Right. Thank you once again, Doctor, for your time, and apologies for that technical error. You were discussing the theme, mobilizing Africa's development financing at scale. Why do you see this theme as being very urgent, specifically as we were speaking about the current challenges in the region as well as the continent as a whole, sir?
Well, yes, at the meetings of Africa held from the 29th of in the capital. Actually, it's on the transformation of the financing model from a finance model with financing This is so important for organization, operation. The aid from the poor countries increased by around 2025, around 54 billion dollars. This is biggest drops in the previous 2-3 years. Africa focuses on reducing the financing gap by mobilizing the domestic resources, attracting private capital from the local market, the regional and the international market, and reforming the frameworks for the financing of sustainable development projects of Africa. It also tries to protect the African countries from the present sovereign debt crisis that the whole globe suffers from.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, Dr. Ayman. Let's talk a bit about the scale of the $1.3 trillion in annual financing gap that Africa faces each year to really reach its sustainable development goals, which is quite a substantial gap.
Well, yes, presently Africa has a financing gap of $1.3 billion annually, as mentioned.
Yes.
And this means that Africa actually needs a new financing model, it needs a new financial architecture. It needs so in order to finance the requirements for the upgrade of African infrastructure, roads network, power plants, power networks, water and sewage networks,
yes,
desalination plants, schools and health systems, the climate adaptation project, the digital infrastructure upgrade, and most importantly, the job creation for the new African generation. That's why, according to the African Development Bank, as you mentioned, the requirements of Africa is to mobilize around $1.3 trillion annually.
Yes, domestically, yes.
Yes, in order to fill such gap and in order to reach its sustainable development goals of 2030.
Now, Dr. Ayman, it is expected that the African Development Bank projects will be one of the fastest growing regions for 2026. How do you see, what is driving this resilience in your opinion? And despite the growth that is expected, what are some of the biggest threats, for example, such as debt distress or, the regional conflict or even global conflict that we're witnessing that could pose great risks to this growth?
Well, actually, the African Development Bank project, Africa's growth would reach 4.3% in 2026, 4.5% in 2027, and such resilience, as you mentioned, is driven by many factors. First of all, the household consumption.
Yes.
We know that Africa's population presently around 1.5 billion inhabitants. And such a big population, it demands a lot of consumption and a lot of demand, especially basic goods and necessities. Also, Africa needs a lot of infrastructure projects and a lot of construction projects. And the construction sector, Africa, in North Africa,
yes,
West Africa, and also South Africa, is one of the booming
industries,
sectors
yes,
in the economy and one of the drivers. The African Development Bank says that 12 of the world's 20 fastest growth economies in 2026 are African countries. But of course, such resilience has some risks and challenges. Now, the biggest risk, of course, is, as I told you, the sovereign debt crisis.
Yes.
Presently, the African sovereign debt is around $2 trillion US. Of course, if you compare this to the global figures, they are not that big because the total global sovereign debt worldwide is around 110 trillion US dollars. But if you compare it to the African total GDP, it's quite some. The African total GDP is around 3.4 trillion dollars. Also, the high debt cost, especially for the low and middle income and medium income countries, and the food security problem, the climate shock problems. Most important, to the low level of African interest rate. It's estimated that the African interest rate is around 10 to 15% from African international trade, as compared to 50 to 60% in Asia and 60 to 70% in Europe. So such low level of trade hinders the possibility of having an African economic integration and African economic cooperation, and it also hinders the capability of the African financial organizations, the financial organizations like the African Development Bank.
Right. We'll leave it at that. Dr. Ayman Ghoneim, our guest, the economic and legal expert. Many thanks, sir, for joining us this afternoon on Africa Today and for your time and insight. With that, we wrap up today's edition of our show. My name is Angie Meher. Thank you for watching.